Clash of candidates. Campaigning takes an aggressive turn. The stakes for Florida Senate seat high. Candidate Debbie Mucarsel-Powell right here live. Surging the vote.
Let's go. We got to get this done.
Get your vote in early, guys. Go.
South Florida running up the numbers.
Process was seamless, super easy.
48 hours to go. Florida's state of play with Miami-Dade's party leaders live.
No one knew about this one.
On the ballot, but votes won't count.
We have always opposed this tax.
Miami Beach pulled the homeless tax question. Should they?
God-awful precedent for small d democracy.
We take it to the mayor live. Plot twist.
We have a self-imposed boundary where we're not supposed to build beyond.
A vote to place a new trash incinerator postponed. Last-minute offers now on the table.
We can't just wish the waste away. We have to deal with it responsibly.
The big news of election week and the newsmakers live this week in South Florida. Good morning and welcome. Great to have you with us this hour. We're starting off with Florida's U.S. Senate race. You know that was heated from the start, but heading into the last 48 hours, South Florida Democrat Debbie Mucarsel-Powell is within the margin of error in her bid to unseat Republican Senator Rick Scott. Florida's race is in the national spotlight as the balance of power in the 50-50 Senate is also in play election day. Campaigning in Miami-Dade this week, Mucarsel-Powell was in a confrontation at the polls that played out on social media.
Yeah, you're running for it. You're running for it.
In South Florida, socialism, socialista, that's been part of the Republicans' campaign messaging against Democrats as they look for support among voters triggered by first-hand experience in socialist dictatorships. Republican incumbent Rick Scott uses that word often. He is finishing his first six-year term, is also running to be leader in the U.S. Senate. He is campaigning in South Florida this weekend. Senator Scott has yet to accept an invitation to join a debate or conversation with the candidates. Debbie Mucarsel-Powell, D, candidate for U.S. Senate, right here at the table with us today, and it is a pleasure to have you. Welcome.
Good morning, Glenna. Always great to be with you.
Thank you. So let's just get it over with and talk about that confrontation. So originally, when we saw bit by bit the videos coming in, it looked like people were in your face. You were being confronted at the stop. Truthfully, when we started seeing a more comprehensive look, it actually looked like you arrived there and waded into that crowd. And, you know, I don't want to use the word instigated, but certainly, apparently, there was two sidesism there. What was your intention showing up there?
So let's clarify the two sides always, that I feel the media is not focusing on the fact that we have one side that committed an insurrection January 6th. Rick Scott voted against certifying the election in 2020, one of 7 senators to do that. And his campaign has not confirmed that he will actually accept the results of the election. And that area, that West Kendall area, I've been traveling all around the state. I've been traveling all around the polling stations, and that I represented that area. And the minute my bus got there, it seemed that they were very rattled because they were having some sort of meeting or, you know, with Rick Scott.
So
now,
this was a Rick Scott campaign event.
Right. So I'm not coordinating with that, right?
But
Obviously.
You knew that.
So I did not know that they had a campaign event at the polling station. I've been traveling nonstop to be in front of as many voters as possible, and my campaign goes to all the different locations, including FIU on Friday. You know, I was going to be for 1 hour inside the Graham Center, and we decided to stay the entire afternoon because there were so many students that were voting. So, you know, we adjust to that. But they came to me with signs that actually were on top of my head. And this is the second time in Miami.
Can we, while you're talking, I want to roll the video.
Yes.
I mean, you see otherwise. You see you coming in first.
Yeah, and then they're
kind of
to block
pushing
me. Yeah.
that away.
Yeah, because they're in my face. And I'm thinking, so
why did you do that? Why were you there?
So let me tell you the whole story, okay, of what I've been experiencing in Miami-Dade County. In Cuba, in Venezuela, the opposition tries to target anyone that's in an opposing view, right? In Cuba, they call that acto de repudio. It happened to me in 2018. I was in lockdown when some people like Kevin Cabrera, who's now in the commission, they were like hammering the door at the office of Donna Shalala at the time, and I actually came to your show right after that event happened. It's very similar to what happened to me in 2018, and it's because they want to silence the opposition. They want to target the opposition. What was very surprising to me is to have someone running for the supervisor of elections, Alina Garcia, who is supposed to be in a nonpartisan race, yelling falsehoods to my face. I was surprised because I've only seen her once before.
Because she's not here, and to be very fair, we did speak with her about it. I believe we have her response, and we can hear her in her own words what she said about this.
But I am not the supervisor of elections, and I have a right to my opinion. Everybody has a right to their opinion. In communist countries, when you have a group of people that are assembled and you want to shut them up, you send agitators and you try to shut them down.
So essentially, what Alina Garcia was saying is she was agreeing with your assessment of what opposition in communist countries does, only she was the victim of it. That was
okay.
her.
So they're doing all of this, Glenna, including Rick Scott, to evade responsibility, to distract our voters from the reality that they have absolutely no plan for the future of the state. Rick Scott has refused to debate me. We accepted 3 debates, and yet he tries to hide behind a wall of supporters. But let me finish, please.
I do not want to interrupt you. We just have a TV time, and I want to make sure you get everything in. So go ahead.
So they don't want to talk about the property insurance crisis that we're facing in the state, that we're paying 4 times the national average. And Rick Scott actually started this issue when he was governor. He's been in government for 14 years, and he's done nothing except write a proposal that would eliminate Medicare and Social Security. In that plan, he would raise taxes on middle-class families. Even Mitch McConnell said this is not a Republican plan, this is Rick Scott's plan. And he hasn't come to help him in this campaign because they're distancing himself from such a radical senator. I mean, he's one of the most extreme senators that we have, and he's done nothing. And so you can continue to play the video. That's fine. Let's talk about the issues, Glenna.
Okay, so let me address that. Senator Scott has backtracked on some of the things in his 11-point plan. I want to talk about the debate issue because that's been a lie. He has not accepted, his campaign has not accepted dates with you here. That is absolutely factual. But why should he, I guess, is the question.
So
he is,
I mean, when we
more name recognition in the state. He's got a ton of money. What would be, I guess the better question is, what would be his benefit in debating you?
So it's not about his benefit or my benefit. It's about answering to the voters why he thinks he deserves another 6 years in the Senate. Now, I think he has forgotten that his duty is to serve the public, to answer to the people that are electing him. I worked for the Summit of the Americas. I actually blocked the participation of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela from participating because they violate human rights, because these are socialist dictatorships that I have made very clear time and time again that I'm completely against. And when you're trying to protect democratic governance, you need to protect freedom of expression, the media, answering questions to the media. And Rick Scott has been evading the media. You've said it, and many other reporters, when I come to their shows, they say, you know, we tried to ask these questions of Rick Scott, and he doesn't have an answer for us.
Do you know that has been a thing with many candidates, because now that you have social media, many candidates bypass questions in media and go straight to messaging to their constituents. That is not a thing solely in this race. We find that in a lot of races.
Because you can control your message,
Well,
and you can control what you're telling people
For
instead
free.
of, look, I'm here with you. You've always been extremely objective, and you push both sides, and I know that. But because I have respect for Floridians, because I want Floridians to have both views, I'm here with you. And Rick Scott has completely abandoned his duty. He should not serve the state of Florida if he can't answer to Floridians, if he can't have a debate in a race, by the way, Glenna, that everybody knows is within the margin of error. Everybody knows that we're basically statistically tied. And every other Republican candidate across the country has had a debate because it's their duty, because it's about serving the public. And of course, look, he wants to eliminate Medicare and Social Security. He supports the most extreme ban on abortion, a 6-week ban on abortion. He has co-sponsored a national abortion bill. He voted against access to contraception. He voted against access to IVF, and yet he has ads saying that he supports IVF. Of course he doesn't want to have a debate with me.
I've asked him that too. His response to that is the bill that included IVF had poison pills to him, packed with too much. Just wanted to get his answer to that on the record. You brought us something really interesting. I mean, this is a nationally watched race, you know that. And it is within the margin of error if you believe polls, and without knowing context of the polls, that's hard to gauge, but it is. Why isn't the National Democratic Party really throwing a lot of money and support at this race?
Yeah, look, from the beginning when I launched the race over a year ago, you and I talked about this, and I always said, I am running independent of any party, of any support. I'm not here asking for anybody's support. We have built a grassroots movement that I'm so proud of, and we've brought in Republicans, independents, Democrats. I can't tell you how many Republicans, when I'm out at the polls, are telling me that they're voting for me. Just at FIU, I met this older gentleman who said, look, I'm voting for Donald Trump, but I'm voting for you because I know that you're for the people. That's the type of race that we've been running, and I'm really proud to tell you that we are where we are because of that, because of the people of the state of Florida that are ready for change.
48 hours to go. Maybe we'll see you back here next week.
Yeah.
Debbie
Thanks,
Mucarsel-Powell, I appreciate your time on this day, in this time. I really do.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you too. All right, next, the party chairs with insights from South Florida voting lines to the front lines of state lawmaking, both of them live face-to-face right here next. Long lines, closing arguments, and number crunching. This is the line already at the North Dade Public Library in Miami Gardens. Right now, people lining up for not only souls to the polls, but the last day of early voting. And after this, it's Tuesday, folks. So 48 hours or so before election 2024 reveals what and whom voters are choosing. And in South Florida, the stakes are so high on so many levels. Team No Sleep this week includes the local Democratic and Republican leadership, those at the top right here today. Alex Rizo is chair of Miami-Dade's Republican Party, a state representative whose district runs from Hialeah to the airport and Miami. Shevrin Jones is Miami-Dade's Democratic Party chair, a state senator repping North Miami-Dade from Miami Gardens to Miami Beach right here at the table. Spreading the love this morning, spreading the love. So nice to have you both here.
We're back.
We're back. Good morning. You'd be here every week. So let me just lay on the table. I know it's been another hour of sleep, but that's not nearly enough. And I'm very grateful that you're here when it's such a busy day. And I want to talk about the numbers. I don't want to get into like the minutia of numbers because we don't have the graphics to support that. But the headline is GOP in Miami-Dade at the moment is killing it. And the Democrats are closing the gap in the last couple of days. So let me go first to you. So lay out, what do you see out there? And if I could, because we're all friends, let's avoid talking points and happy talk and really give me the truth.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are you seeing out there? What are your concerns?
I see a lot of passion. I see people that from the very beginning that early voting began have been out there making lines. It's been actually great weather for it, but it doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's hot. We just stopped by a polling place and there was a line that almost wrapped around the building with at least 300 people in it. Absolutely amazing. A lot of passion. What I would like to see, to answer your question, is I'd like to see more people come out today to vote than on actual election day.
Miami-Dade, at last check this morning, 53% voting turnout. That's pretty good, right?
Pretty good.
Shevrin, what do you see?
Well, listen, what I'm seeing now is that the Democrats, we are out. The people are out. We look at North Dade Regional Library right now, where they have lines that's wrapped around the library, because today is that day that we know for a fact souls to the polls is happening across the country. And we recognize that we started at a little bit of a deficit last week, and we knew we needed to do some course correction to make sure people knew where their voting places there can be and to mail their ballots back in. And I think that's why we're seeing the engagement that we're seeing right now.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think from our sort of perch here, the vote by mail rule changes.
Right.
I see for the first time you really I believe, see an effect
Right.
of that. Do you agree?
Absolutely, I agree with you, because when the law changed in 2021 during the legislative session, we had not had a presidential election. So this is the first presidential election that has to fit around that the 2021 legislative session. And we knew, even going into this, that the 50% drop in those individuals who requested a vote by mail ballot would be the case, considering how the law and what it stated for us not to the automatic renewal of vote by mail. We knew it, and unfortunately the Republicans took that away from the citizens to have. So it has been a little bit harder for individuals to be able to get their vote by mail ballots.
Because some didn't even realize that they weren't going to get
Exactly.
it. But why would that be a Democratic issue and not a Republican issue? Because Republicans vote by mail as well.
I don't know. The law doesn't stipulate Democrat over Republican or vice versa.
Have you been seeing that, though, in the party, in your party voters?
Yes.
We did a very good job. We did a very good job of messaging and letting people know ahead of time what was going on. So, you know, I mean, whatever's going on with that on the Democratic side, I can't really explain, other than I think there's a lack of passion for candidates on the Democrat side to turn people out.
Would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely. We have a very great excitement for our candidates. As a matter of fact, we have a very great excitement for the top of the ticket. Her name is Vice President Kamala Harris, to where we're seeing that engagement that absolutely exists. Not even withstanding the polling numbers or anything, the one thing that we are clear on is that Democrats are voting. People are voting for the message that they have seen, and we're seeing that because we're at the doors. And whether or not the numbers look like they look right now, I want to remind people that right now people are voting for decency, dignity right now in this election, and it's with Vice President Kamala Harris. And we're seeing it because we're making those calls and we're knocking on those doors.
Interested to hear your response.
To what?
To all the people voting
to many things.
Let's just talk people. You know, Shevrin just said people are voting for decency and honesty, and I mean,
they are.
I know people of both parties in Miami-Dade who are very decent and very honest.
Absolutely, they are.
Is that a concern that what is intimating at the top of the ticket?
Yes, absolutely. They are voting for decency. They are voting for honesty. They're letting their voice heard that they are not garbage, as the president called all the supporters out of Donald Trump.
Well, we're going to go there. We're going to go there on both ends. So let's keep it local if we keep it local. So let me just ask you both. No party affiliated voters. Hello. Mm-hmm. Big force in Miami-Dade.
Yep.
And the momentum has been moving on that side more so than the Democratic side. The Republicans, we continue
How do you know that?
Because we see the numbers. We see the numbers every day, as actually hourly. I'm keeping an eye on it probably every 10, 15 minutes.
Can you check right now?
I can actually. And so we see that the NPAs have really come out as of the last 3-4 days. On the Republican side, our numbers as of close yesterday, we hit 300,000 out of almost 500,000 registered voters on the Republican side of Miami-Dade County. And we also see that it's about 63% turnout on the Republican side. So we are far outpacing that average that you mentioned before.
And the Democrats are really catching steam on that right now. But I want to make it clear right now that when we look at the MPAs right now in the state of Florida, you know, we have done the research and we are looking at those voters, and they are leaning Democrat.
How do you gauge that?
Well, listen, I'll gauge you because we're doing the phone calls and we're knocking on their doors in Miami-Dade County. And let us not forget that even right now, the former president of the United States cannot seem to get an endorsement from any of his former top aides. And so I think that should be a sign of what and how this election is going, because of people are looking to turn the page in what we're seeing. And I'm telling you, it is going to have a very big effect on down ballot candidates. And I think that we absolutely should pay attention to it. And I think there's going to be a great deal of upsets on Tuesday.
You know what's really interesting to watch is that whatever happens nationally, I mean, some of it is quite divorced from down ballot, practically speaking, but can't be in the election. Mm-hmm. So let me give you some numbers that I found. Just generally speaking, statewide, state of Florida, registration is 44-33 GOP. So there's an 11% gap, statewide registration. Turnout so far is 58-54 GOP. So not an 11% reflective, but a 4-point move.
4-point where in Miami-Dade?
No, statewide.
Statewide, that's not the percentage that I see overall. Overall, we see an 11% gain, almost 12%
in the registration
advantage. In turnout, in actual turnout
okay, that's
right
a different
now.
number than I saw.
And I'll show it to you in the break. I'll bring it up and we can fact check that.
I have no response to it. I would say this. I would stick to the point that the fastest growing party in the state of Florida is the MPA. And I also want to make sure we point out right now that the Republicans continue to talk about this 1 million voter registration lead that they have.
1.1.
Which is not of new registrants, right? I want to continue to put out there that this does not convey the message to the Floridians of the amount of Democrats who have been affected by the law of 2021 of the purging of individuals who right now within the state of Florida. We talked about this already.
We talked about it
That's
last
right.
time we were here.
But he didn't agree with you at
He
that
didn't
time.
agree with me.
And I'm not going to agree now.
All right, see the break sign? The break sign means we've got to take a quick break, but I want to talk a little bit of issues when we come back, so stay tuned. We can come out in mid-conversation. I want you to know that the crew here found your commercial interaction even funnier than what we're talking. Not that this is funny, but it's really nice to be able to have your perspectives here, and I really want to take it to some of the issues that Miami-Dade, Monroe and Broward are going to be finding a lot of commonality in the things that Miami-Dade does. But Miami-Dade has 5 new constitutional officers, kind of doing now what Broward and Monroe are going to do, and specifically, there's a couple, sheriff and tax collector. Almost every candidate has been here, almost. Alina Garcia, who we spoke about, the supervisor elections candidate, and J.C. Planis is the Democrat in that race. That's going to be, that is a partisan race. And I want to get your take on specifically things like the supervisor of elections, a county sheriff, the tax collector. These are inherently, clerk of court, nonpartisan jobs, especially supervisor of elections overseeing what might be contested elections. Alex, how do you frame for voters how that is going to work, a partisan in that job?
Partisanship simply gives you an idea of a person's compass needle, okay? Which way they lean. Is it right? Is it left? Are they an MPA? Are they saying it could go anyway, right? But the thing about having a partisan election is that you're giving the right to the people to say, I don't like the job that this person is doing as head of this department every 4 years, 2 years, whenever it's going to come around, and say, we want to change. Okay, so that's what I think. I think that these, especially in Miami-Dade County, these are such important offices when you're talking about like a tax collector taking in, how much, 12, 13, 14 billion dollars a year and growing.
Yeah.
This is extremely important, and I think it's giving power back into the hands of the people.
That's interesting. I'll just point out that for the people who want to make a change in a primary, in a partisan election, NPAs are cut out of that process. So there's that. But what do you think?
Hey, listen, I know it's the law of the land, but there's a reason why it was set up with those constitutional offices weren't partisan. Because when you're dealing with the people, when you come to tax collector, sheriff, and those different things, and you create this partisanship that we already see is really breaking down the fragment of this country, because everyone now, no one's talking to anyone because everyone's on their side of the aisle. The least we could have done is those type of constitutional offices, kept them as is, to where you have to appease to everyone within that area, not Democrat, not Republican. What is your expectation for the people who you plan on serving from whoever party they're from?
And if I can just take that up a level, do you have concerns if a Republican becomes the supervisor of elections, especially a Republican who has yet to say that Donald Trump did not win the 2020 election?
But listen, I believe anyone who cannot...
And I just want to be on record as saying that is a fact, not a judgment call. No judgment here,
right?
Because it's important for me to say that, but go ahead.
Listen, she's currently a representative. If you cannot say out of your mouth that the 2020 election was a fair election, and now you're running to be the supervisor of elections, to where you are now the lead in how we count ballots here in this county, that's an absolute problem. Even if you are running to be the supervisor of election and you show up the way you did in the last few days for a U.S. Senate candidate, that's a problem. And so, yeah, I mean, if you are going to become so partisan to where you can even represent or show yourself in being collective and being there for the people, that's a problem on the onset.
Do you have that, Alex, same concern?
No, I don't. I don't.
Well, would you? Because it could go either way.
It could go either way. I mean, but here's the thing, is that, again, people are going to be accountable. The people that are running for these offices and eventually elected are going to be held accountable by people. So, again, if you're too partisan or anything else, now, I would imagine that, you might fall prey to, your success or lack thereof. Now, I just find it interesting that, again, Shevrin Jones, our senator, someone who I respect greatly, would disagree with a partisan countywide election when the Democrats have had historically the numbers and the majority of all voting. Why would that be a problem in Miami-Dade County when Republicans are clearly still a minority?
You're looking at me, but you're asking him, so go ahead.
But listen, again, I'm speaking of decency. I don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. The question is, can you serve the people in a non-biased way in these positions when it comes to tax collector, sheriff, and things of that nature? Because of the engagement that you have with these individuals. I never even spoke about party. Why? Because I'm consistent with it. I don't care if you are a Republican. The question is, do you serve the people who live within that area based in this constitutional office?
You know, before we have about 3 minutes left in this segment, and I really want to get your perspective on amendments 3 and 4, the recreational marijuana, the abortion rights amendment. I know everyone will know where you both stand on that. There's very little daylight. On the abortion rights, there's no daylight. I know you've been with your Republican colleagues in support of the recreational marijuana, but that notwithstanding, the governor and the administration are against both, and as well, I respect their decision to be that way, but using taxpayer money and resources, we've counted 6 different state departments, upwards of $20 million in some call it propaganda, some call it information, which is not by law a legal thing to do. Spoke to the governor about it. He thinks it's on the up and up. What do you think?
I agree. Look, I agree with the governor. If we have a department that clearly says there is a break of the law, somewhere it was infringed, then fine, let that department work to try to prove that. Now, if there's somewhere where a department is using its budget illegally, well, obviously that will come up eventually. I've been very focused on elections and getting people elected locally, so I haven't really delved into exactly the minutia of what it is that's been going on.
Valid.
I'm going to say this is inappropriate. It's inappropriate that the governor has used taxpayer dollars to spew propaganda to Floridians to try to spew Amendment 3, Amendment 4, and try to convey it in their messaging. When you use upwards of $50 million to go against an amendment, which those dollars weren't supposed to be used for that, those dollars were for opioid, for messaging, for other things of that nature. The governor knows better. The governor is a graduate of a very astute law school, and so he knows better, and so does the individuals who work inside his office. It's inappropriate and it's not right.
Anything about it, in your sense, trying to thwart the will of the people? Do you see it that way?
It's misinformation. That's why people hate politics now, because of the misinformation, because of the way things and how you elected officials who are in power use that power. And when you use it in a way to misinform people and try to sway something that's absolutely not true. And I think those who have been following this process and how ballot initiatives work, all of this stuff has to come back to the legislature anyway for rulemaking. So the will of the people should always be the will of the people.
I want to end with just you reacting to that. Do you see it? I know you don't know, you're not in the weeds with the details. I appreciate that. But do you see the anti-work as trying to thwart the will of the people?
No, I see it as people giving their opinion. Look, the governor is a citizen. He has one vote, just like his wife does. But is acting as governor. Is acting as governor, absolutely. But let's just because, for example, I'm elected and I represent about 200,000 people, about 1/3 of what the senator here does. And when I am on the show and I say I'm against 3 and I'm against 4 as well, that's my opinion. Okay.
But you haven't cut any ads using your constituents' money to sway either way, yes or no?
Like I said,
no, he hasn't, because it's wrong.
I have not. And again, I don't know the details of what's been going on. But again, when it comes to a legal point, which I do see that the Department of Health did have a legal point to say that one of the ads was totally misleading in saying that abortion is banned in Florida, which it is not.
We talked about that. That actually there was that ad, but the Department of Health letters were about another ad, which we fact-checked to find that it was true. But the Department of Health letters can't be held anyway because a judge said no. Right. So that's that. And I think we got to go.
That's that.
As much as I'd love to keep going.
We want to keep
going. We would love to keep going.
Yes.
We got a couple of other guests out there that might fight you for that. Thank you so much.
Great. Can we get a final message in? Get out and vote.
Yes.
Come to Souls to the Poet, North Dade Regional Library today at 1:00 p.m.
I love when I have bipartisan love here. All right, thanks so much, you both.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next on the ballot, but votes will not count. Miami Beach canceled a question even as people were voting on it, an unprecedented move, according to the judge who okayed it. The mayor of Miami Beach, right here next. May a question be removed from the ballot even as elections are underway and thousands have already voted? That was the unprecedented issue facing a Miami judge who ruled yes, it can. The question on Miami Beach's ballot asked voters whether to add another 1% tax at city restaurants for countywide homeless services. Some 20,000 votes were in, probably more at this point, when the commission invalidated it on Wednesday. It had been put on the ballot last year by a prior commissioners, and some on the current commission said they hadn't even realized it was there and were against any new taxes on business or on residents. Miami Beach Mayor Stephen Minor was one of the 4 who voted to remove the question from the ballot. Right here to talk about that at the table. Welcome.
Thanks, Glenna.
Welcome back, I should say.
Good to be here.
Thanks. So, so the judge on Friday ruled what you did was perfectly legal. That actually surprised some of the people sitting in the courtroom. Did it surprise you?
No, it's our commission that last year I voted against it, but the majority at the time had voted to put it on the ballot, and just
different commissioners.
Yeah. And just as that commission had put it on the ballot, we took it off the ballot.
So, and you checked with the city attorney who actually backed that opinion.
Correct.
So when the lawsuit was filed, it used some pretty harsh terms about taking the vote away from voters who already had it. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I didn't like the timing. The timing was awful. I'll be the first one to admit it. I said it at the commission meeting, but ultimately we are tasked with making the best decisions for the residents of Miami Beach. And this vote not to tax our residents and local business was the right vote. It may have been late, but it's the right decision.
How did the new commission, not realize that that was there? How could it not? I mean, from a layperson's point of view, residents are watching this and thinking the commission must know what's going on the ballot. Where was that disconnect?
A couple of my colleagues on the commission made those statements. I can't speak for them. I knew it was on the ballot. The question, I think, was, can we take it off?
Yeah.
That's really the big issue to me, and it came up late in the game, but ultimately our legal attorney had made the decision that we could, and so did a judge.
To your point, there are kind of 2 questions here. One is the actual question of the 1% tax on restaurants to fund homeless countywide. And then the other is the voters decide or not. And a lot of our coverage was kind of straddling both issues. And in turn, I would like to kind of hash out the 1% tax, because who doesn't want to help homeless services and people experiencing homelessness? Who doesn't? But the Homeless Trust that does that work in the county has a budget, gets tax money from a lot of other municipalities with restaurant taxes, not Miami Beach. Bal Harbour is now also voting on it. But Miami Beach does have other taxes already in the city. And I'd like you to go through why not add 1 more percent.
If I believed that 1% tax would have helped the homeless, I would have voted for it. I don't believe it will. I don't believe it does. We look at cities like California, Seattle, Portland that tax tremendous amounts to try to help the homeless, and they have the worst homeless problems nationwide. We do a tremendous amount to help the homeless in Miami Beach. We spend millions of dollars every year.
7 million is
yes, to help with shelter beds, to try to find permanent housing, employment opportunities, medical attention, mental health counseling, addiction counseling. There's also an enforcement aspect to it, no question about it, and we take enforcement seriously as a law and order city. But we do a tremendous amount to help the homeless. This 1% tax, in my opinion, would have been borne by our residents and local businesses. By the way, hotels are exempt from it. So the tourists are not paying the tax.
They're paying other taxes.
They're paying other taxes. Yeah. But our residents and local mom and pop shops, businesses, would have borne the brunt, and I don't think that was fair, and I don't think this extra money would have been the game changer.
So the countywide, the Homeless Trust does an exemplary role model type of job of helping the homeless and providing services, wraparound services. This money, this 1%, would have been added to that. Is that right?
Correct.
And so
that's my understanding, but here you just hit on a key point. The Homeless Trust, for all the work they do, and they do some very good work, they're an unelected body, Once that money is taxed from MMH, that money gets sent over. We don't control it. We have no authority over it. And we have no decision-making input in where that money is spent. That is not the best use of Miami Beach taxpayers' money.
Okay, and so 4 people on the commission, for that reason, it was all a money issue and a taxing issue.
Correct.
That led to the 4-3 vote to take this off the ballot.
Correct.
So why, when the vote is counted, which they'll be invalidated, when you see the vote, will that give you any charting of course for the future as it relates to homeless funding in the city?
The vote on this 1% that's now
invalidated. Are you going to, I guess the question is, are you going to count it and use it kind of as a straw poll of sorts?
Sure, and I had asked our city attorney, could we convert it to a straw poll, which I was told could not be done.
Right.
But I'll certainly look at the results. I take what our residents say very seriously. At the same time, we were elected to make the hard decision. This is not some fundamental right that we removed from a ballot. It's a tax. It's a tax, and it's an important issue. And ultimately, I voted against this tax every step of the way. Even when our prior commission voted, I voted against it. I don't believe it's the best use of our money. I believe it will hurt our city. And I have to make those decisions. That's what I believe, and I'm going to consistently vote that way.
I think you make a very good point. It's not like, the amendments, specifically 3 and 4, that were put on by the citizens, this is not that. This is not something that's being taken away from the citizens' effort. It is a legislative decision that did it, and a legislative decision undid it. So I'm glad you made that distinction.
It's a big distinction.
Yeah. And so it's done. Done deal.
It's a done deal. The court ruled in our favor. It's a done deal. I mean, now we have to deal with some of the consequences.
Fallout.
Yes. I mean, for example, we had shipped against their will 53 homeless people shipped to our city.
I know that
against their will, which is honestly it's shameful. And by the way, Miami Beach is the one who then provided the help and the resources to them to help them, because that's what we do. We're a compassionate city.
All right, Mayor Stephen Minor, great to have you to hash all that out. A really unprecedented issue that I think is pretty fascinating.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, what was to be a final decision in the site selection for Miami-Dade incinerator and waste to energy campus was suddenly postponed because the Miami-Dade mayor said 2 more possibilities came up at the 11th hour. More on that is next. Countdown to the controversial decision this week where Miami-Dade will build a new incinerator and waste operation that was suddenly postponed when 2 more possibilities came up at the last minute. Why it's controversial and whether it even has to be is what Local 10's Louis Aguirre explains.
Here we are digging our grave, dumping massive amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. It's crazy.
Don't want it in their backyard.
An abominable choice.
A lot of trash talk about where Miami-Dade County plans to build a brand new waste-to-energy trash incinerator after the old Cavanta plant in Doral burnt down in February of 2023.
This commission wants to move forward. They've been waiting.
4 sites now on the table, including the original location in Doral and the now closed Opa-locka Airport West site near the Everglades. Environmentalists say they're all bad.
Yeah, our position is not a NIMBY position. It's a NOPE position, not on planet Earth.
Stephen Leidner is the conservation chair for Sierra Club Miami Group. With just days before the final vote, he organizes a meeting at the Coral Gables Congregational Church,
the country's largest garbage incinerator,
so that residents and young students can voice their concerns to the county's Chief of Resilient Solid Waste Department.
We can't pollute the world, because if not, we won't have a world to live in. And the incinerator is just not the best option right now.
Opponents very worried about the environmental impact this new plant would have, especially with the Airport West site outside Dade's urban development boundary.
We have a self-imposed boundary where we're not supposed to build beyond. And we're going to put the country's largest garbage incinerator there, literally a stone's throw from the Everglades. Our most sensitive environmental treasure.
This, in fact, would be the largest waste-to-energy plant in the country, capable of turning 4,000 tons of trash a day into electricity and alternative fuels. But at what cost to the planet?
It's the most polluting and expensive way to manage waste or to make energy. When you burn this stuff, you get carbon dioxide, which is a big global warming pollutant. you get huge amounts of it.
But Miami-Dade Mayor Daniela Levine Cava pushes back.
We believe that a lot of what has been shared by concerned citizens is antiquated research based on an old model, not the new science.
The mayor says she spent the past year and a half researching new technology and points to the new generation of waste-to-energy plants like the ones in Dubai, Japan, and this newest one in Copenhagen that claim to have greatly reduced the toxic fumes and bad odors that spew into the atmosphere, even mitigating noxious gases.
That has been fully studied, and especially with the new standards, is clearly not at the level of concern.
Environmentalists say that's greenwashing.
Yes, they may have cleaned the smoke a little bit. They may have made it smell better. But it is currently proven under the county's own study that there is no mitigation for carbon and greenhouse gas at this level.
But the mayor points to research showing that landfills and the amount of methane they emit are much more harmful.
It's the trucking that uses carbon for the transportation, and there's the fact that the landfill itself is producing methane and other pollution.
Miami-Dade County currently produces 5 million tons of trash a year. That's double the national average because of all the tourists that visit here. The county's landfills are full, and since the old incinerator burned down, the county's waste is now transported up to Central Florida. That's not sustainable, and the mayor believes this new incinerator is the best path forward.
I am satisfied with the expert advice that I've received that this is a responsible way.
But opponents argue there are greener alternatives to incineration, building a zero-waste campus that encourages composting, more efficient recycling, and repurposing of construction materials that make up the majority of trash that winds up in landfills.
Composting alone will reduce 50 to 70% of our waste stream.
Thank you very much.
For the youth, it's their future on the line.
They have the final decision in all of this, and they should be listening to the future and what is going to be the future Miami and the future community leaders.
The mayor says she's bringing in a zero waste consultant to help the county implement a range of options to reduce and better manage our waste. That includes expanding composting programs, improving recycling, but more importantly, education, because reducing how much waste we produce is all our responsibility. Again, that final vote on the fate of this proposed incinerator happens Wednesday. We will be there. For more information on this story, scan that QR code. It'll take you straight to the Don't Trash Our Treasure page on local10.com. I'm Louis Aguirre, Local 10 News.
Update which was postponed. TBA. We'll be right back. That is our program today. Links to all the interviews to see and to share, and our This Week in South Florida podcast. It's all on local10.com. Right there, the QR code. Scan it, takes you there. We want to hear your thoughts about today's program or anything in the news. We'd love to hear from you, and our email is our initials, TWISF@WPLG.com. And you can also find me on social media at Glenna, WPLG. Also, a reminder, tonight we're showcasing key races and issues during Vote 2024 special. It'll be 7 o'clock tonight, right here on Local 10. Big doings. Thank you so much for spending this hour with us. Have a beautiful day, and remember, keep in touch.
This is a Local 10 editorial with President and CEO Bert Medina.
Only 537 people determined the future of the nation in the year 2000. 537 votes right here in Florida separated candidates George W. Bush and Al Gore. If you ever think your vote doesn't count, remember election 2000. Your vote matters. You will decide who will lead our country, and the choices could not be more different. You will elect our next U.S. Senator. Important questions regarding marijuana and abortion are also on the ballot. Your vote will decide who sits on the school board or who runs your city. We must all be active participants in our democracy. Tuesday is Election Day. If you're registered to vote and you haven't done so yet, get to the polls on Tuesday. Our future depends on it. And remember, if you don't vote, don't complain. Of course, this is just the beginning of the conversation. Let's continue it on local10.com.
This has been a Local 10 editorial.